Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone.
You making fun of me?
No. So I guess this week I would be remiss, or we would be remiss, if we didn't talk about the debacle that was Monday morning when I took our youngest daughter to take a driving test, and at this point in time, I am being held responsible for her failure of said driving test due to my reaction or reactive behaviour, which I could probably put up quite a healthy defence.
Is that what you're going to do?
No, I'm not going to do that at all. Well, I might in part do that. I might give both sides of the coin. But so what happened was, well, actually, I think we should go back 2 weeks to when I took her for her
first
test.
debacle.
The first debacle. When I took her for her first test and I forgot some of the documentation, and we were told we had to reschedule. Even though I came up with a very good solution, the lady behind the desk was not willing to play ball, and by that point she said, "Oh, we've missed your test by 15 minutes now, and you're going to have to go home and reschedule." So anyway, rescheduled, and that date was this last Monday. And when I took her along, I had this bright idea that we'd go there an hour early, and we'd follow one of the other test takers on the route, just to see the lay of the land, so that she could get acclimatized and know what to expect. And within that process, the instructor got very upset with me and
What did
started
she do?
waving her fist.
She did. She waved her fist out the
Well,
window.
no, I think it was more a question of pointing me in another direction. But you could. It almost looked like a wave of the fist. She wasn't happy. If she wasn't waving her fist, she was thinking about waving her fist. Anyway, I guess our youngest daughter was rather embarrassed by that experience, and was worried that she was going to be the instructor, and she was.
No.
But anyway, that's all by the by, because the real issue was that that on the drive over to the DMV and the practice session that we had before the test, I had on no less than 4 occasions made or given her feedback about the fact that she had not checked the blind spot or checked the mirror before making a manoeuvre. One of which was on the freeway, where she pulled over into the left-hand lane without checking the blind spot. So by the 4th time, it wasn't one of my most conscious moments. On the 4th occasion, when I gave her this feedback, which I think the feedback on 3 occasions was definitely very neutral, but by the 4th time I was irritated. And then I think what was more irritating was that I wasn't really, it was being dealt with kind of irritation. It was like irritation that I'm getting this feedback. So I think that's what sparked it all off for me. And I said, well, I don't think you deserve to take the test at that.
In that tone?
Probably not in that tone.
In an angry tone?
I was triggered, and I felt like I wasn't being heard or listened to. And I was actually, I think behind it all, there's like this there was this growing sense of nervousness that she's about to get her license, because I didn't think she'd fail. And that she would be behind the wheel of a motor car and would be making those decisions, or not making decisions, making bad decisions, bad choices. So I guess I was nervous behind all that. Anyway, those are excuses. It was not good for me to do that. And worst of all, what it did is that she blames me for failing that test. It's all my fault. But in that one moment of despair, I kind of broke rapport. So I think that with a teenager, rapport is everything, and it's hard to sort of be dealing with another human being who's kind of on the cusp of sort of like they're between being a child and being an adult, and there are all these hormones swirling around inside their heads, and they're not the most rational of beings. So there are occasions when I forget that, and I take feedback that I'm getting from them personally, and then I can be reactive. And it's like what was so interesting about that experience is I reacted, and as soon as like the words left my mouth, it's almost like I got to step out of myself and observe this sort of experience unfolding, and could realize that, oh God, you know, look what I've done. I've really damaged rapport here. How am I going to ever dig myself out of this hole? And the fact was I couldn't dig myself out of that hole. And I tried my very best from that moment forward to sort of get her into a better frame of mind, but I was just fighting a losing battle. And then she failed the test, and what was so ironic was the reason she failed was that she didn't check the blind spot.
Well, at least she's consistent.
And I very stupidly
Pointed that.
pointed that out on the drive back, which is when the fireworks really started happening by that point. But at least I didn't engage. I just pointed it out, and
Couldn't help yourself.
I guess I couldn't help myself. It was definitely not. It was not a good day for me being a parent in a conscious way.
Well, I think that especially with teenagers, but I think human beings in general, but when we get stirred up, because she must have been nervous before she was going to do that test, and that because she was so stirred up, and then you getting anxious on top of it, it's like adding gasoline to a flame.
Yeah, and you know, there has been this constant backdrop for me of like being nervous about her driving, and you know that there needs to be a better sense of awareness about what's going on around you. So I think that's why I was already stirred up. I was already sped up, and it's kind of like, I guess, the perfect storm in a way.
But I think with teenagers, it's just it's so easy to break rapport. They can be really sensitive, and it's like we have to really be in a good place inside of ourselves, because they're oftentimes not in a good place inside of themselves. And so the onus is kind of on us as parents to not lose our cool to the best of our abilities.
Yeah.
And I know I do.
Yeah.
I do myself. Been brought to my knees many times and losing my temper with our girls and not proud of it. But it's you know, I think being able to see that the focus then just needs to be on getting back into a good place.
Yeah. Well, I think I've come a long way. I hope I've come a long way. I think that, you know, definitely you're right. I think it's important to be conscious of being the one that has to take the higher ground. And then I guess what was interesting about the other day is that I know that I descended into the depths of hell, and then committed a mortal act. And but then I quickly ascended back into a higher place with a better perspective and realized, oh God, why did I do that? And then, you know, tried to rebuild rapport. But at least I'm seeing that now. But it's hard, you know. There are times when it's hard to not descend into the depths of despair and react from that place.
I think we're human.
We are human.
I think that happens to all of us. And the most important thing then is to apologize like you did.
Yeah.
And then do whatever you can to get goodwill back in place.
Yeah, and just be patient, and goodwill will hopefully come back into being at some point.
Patience is key.
Patience is a virtue. You know what? In my day, I was thinking, because I failed my test first time in England, and
here.
We won't talk about it here. It's a whole other story. I drove in a bike lane the size of a frigging freeway.
Did you check your blind spot?
Probably not. In my day, the thing that what I didn't like about the driving test is that you had to do an emergency stop, which you don't have to do here. And I don't think they had what do they call those brakes?
Handbrake?
No. What are the brakes? I'm going to sound so naive and stupid now. What are the hydraulic brakes? What do they call them? Like they have brakes now. There's a braking system.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's an automatic braking system, but it has a special name. I'm sure people.
Power brakes?
No, not power brakes. Of course, they're power brakes. Anyway, well, they didn't have that in my day because I guess I'm that old. You had to pump the brakes. So doing an emergency stop, which the driving instructor would whack the dashboard, and that would be the signal to do an emergency stop. You had and 90% of the times the British roads were wet anyway, so you had to pump the brakes. Now I think there is an automatic system that does that for you, just to put your foot down. But in my day, you had to pump the brakes, so you couldn't just like slam your foot because you go into a skid.
Okay.
So whatever reason I had thinking about that I was like, oh God, I'm gonna get into a skid, and didn't like it. And there was the suspense, the build up. He says, right, you're going to do an emergency stop. I'm going to get ready to do an emergency stop, and you're just waiting for that bang on the dashboard. So anyway, it wasn't an issue for me, but I remember having a lot of thinking about that. But my dad's got this brilliant story because he took his test way back in the dark ages in a car that belonged to his father. It was an American car called a Packard. I think it was an American car, but it was a dirty, great big car. And I guess the brakes on that car were pretty amazing for that time period. And that he had this instructor who was this sort of little old lady. Well, I don't know how old she was, but it was a little lady, let's say, small, bijou woman, and quite frosty of the face. And that when he did an emergency stop, because the braking system was so acute, and they had no safety belts in those days, she ended up underneath the dashboard on the floor.
Was she hurt?
No, I don't think she was hurt, other than her pride was very hurt, and he failed the test.
Because of that?
That's what he said, anyway. But
Sounds like he did a very good stop.
He did an amazing stop, so much so that I don't think she was expecting it. I think the old brakes at that time in the 30s probably were not what they were or are today.
So our daughter's is continuing in the Ross tradition of not passing her test on the first time.
And the silver lining in all this is that I'm sure that indelibly etched in her brain is that you need to check the blind spot.
Well, we hope so.
Mirror signal maneuver, as they used to say in England.
That's good. Good memory.
It is.
Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great weekend.
Bye.